Practical Fish Keeping, August 2021. What's black and red all over? You think you know a fish, and then someone observes it in the wild, and you have to start over. Here's the confusing world of the black phantom tetra. I have a confession to make. Sometimes, just occasionally, I can be one of those arrogant, know-it-all hobbyists. You know the kind, when you show them your earnest attempt at an Amazon biotope, where all of the plants are clearly thriving and the fish are happy and healthy, they look at you askance and say, "That Amazon sword, not found in the same river basin as those fish." My sin is that I will walk into an aquatic store and an assistant will begin to ask all of the right questions. What size tank have you got? What sort of fish are in it? What sort of water are you using? And I'll respond, I've kept fish for years. In fact, the ones we're looking for at now in that tank, I've bred them at home. I've collected them in the wild, studied their habitat, swum with them. I know them better than you do. Except that I don't say that because it would be appalling. But I do tend to emit a barely suppressed smirk, knowing smile, and say, "It's okay. I've kept these guys before. I'm confident they'll be happy in my tank." If the assistant requests more information, I will grudgingly, but still in a friendly manner, answer their questions. In fact, I have become the very thing I despised when I worked in aquatic stores. The sort of person who, when you ask them if they've had guppies before, will pull out their National Guppy Champion Breeder First Place Prize Certificate and shove it in your face. Be humble. Okay, that's the confession, but why raise it? Well, because I think it is important to remember that no matter how much experience you have, there is always more. There is always something you don't know, and making anyone feel remotely bad for not being on the same hobby level as you is not only terrible, but, well, there's always a bigger fish, someone who does know more and who can run rings around you. I recently read a piece on rainbow fish in PFK by Gabor Horvath. He confessed to not knowing about the presence of a particular variation of Madagascan rainbows. From all I've read from Gabor, with his vast experience and skill as a breeder, what he doesn't know is often not worth knowing. Yet here he was, happily sharing his lack of knowledge and thus imparting useful information to the rest of us. I know hobbyists and scientists who'd rather die before allowing anyone to know that they didn't know something, no matter how small yet helpful it might be. When the editor of Practical Fish Keeping said he'd like an article on black phantom tetras, Hipposabricon megalopterus, I was reminded of one of my own "actually I know nothing" moments. I'd worked in the aquarium hobby trade as an aquarist for London Zoo, and have even explored the Pantanal region of Brazil for years before I learned that black phantom tetras are in fact red. Yes, wild specimens are often even redder than their cousins, the Serape tetra, Hipposabricon equus. It seems that after the black phantom tetras were brought to Europe, breeders decided that black-blue would be nicer than red. Or perhaps there's another reason that they pursued bloodlines of black fish. Serape tetra and black phantoms shoal together, and may therefore be collected together. Importers and breeders may have simply realized that instead of producing and selling two red, fairly similar-looking species, creating a color variant would bring something different to the market. It has been written that the black phantom name comes from the fact that the black humeral spot behind the eyes on H. megalopterus, outlined in silver, does look in fact rather like a ghost. But the fact that in the hobby the males tend to be very black and the females nowhere near as red as wild individuals confuses matters further. Dr. Flavio Lima of the State University of Campinas in Brazil, who has collected and studies H. megalopterus extensively, told me that he has seen a few collected male specimens, which did have a much darker coloration than was usual. This may be the starting point of the man-made color transition. Phantom origins. Hipposabricon megalopterus was originally described by Eigenmann in 1915, after he supposedly collected it in the town of Cáceres, in the state of Mato Grosso, central West Brazil. However, ichthyologists think that the type locality may have actually been further north, within the Guapore River, which straddles the Bolivia-Brazil border. The fish also occurs in the Beni and Mamor river systems within Bolivia, and is found to the south across the Paraguay River found in the south across the Paraguay River basin within Brazil, principally in lowland, wetland, and stream habitats. My own encounters with the species have been largely in the southern Pantanal wetlands of the state of Mato Grosso do Sul, in the Salobra River. There I collected them and spent many hours watching them underwater. From my own collection data, I can tell you that they were most abundant in our nets in the dry season from May to December, low water, easier to catch fish, and fewer were caught during the wet season. But my underwater observations, photos, and videos show that during the wet season, especially January to March, far more individuals were present. At this time, when the landscape floods to peak levels, it provides fish with a vast amount of additional food, beyond the riverbanks. Seeds, fruit, insects, detritus, and algae growing on recently submerged terrestrial plants. In clear, shallow, sunlit waters, fuel a bloom in fish numbers, and assists in bringing them into breeding condition. This leads to great agglomerations of fish, particularly small species of carrakins who gather to spawn. Why red? Observing Hipposabricon megalopterus in the wild can be a bit of a headache, as they shoal alongside their cousins Hipposabricon equus. Both fish, bright red in the wild and fast-moving, become hard to differentiate. The easiest method is that H. megalopterus has a black tail and silver edging, which in tannin-stained water looks gold around the dark humeral spot, while H. equus possesses neither. Why are the two species so similar? It may be a case of protective association behavior, where species appear morphologically very similar and are found occurring together. If you blend in well with your neighbours as a shoal, you should have a better chance of avoiding predation than as one lone black fish amid red individuals. I have discussed with Dr. Fernando Carvalho of the Federal University of Mato Grosso do Sul as to why these fish are so colourful. Most other species in their habitats merge with everything they can, either with camouflage that imitates their surroundings or markings mimicking other species, which allows them to shoal together in great mixed species shoals. However, Hipposabricon equus and Hipposabricon megalopterus pop out at you in resplendent crimson. They are active during the day, and in the case of H. equus, usually not shy. Other than the fact that both species can shoal together, the reason for their red livery remains a mystery. Carvalho and I both came up with a similar hypothesis. Typically, in nature, red signifies danger and is employed by various poisonous insects, amphibians, and reptiles to avoid being eaten. Why shouldn't some fish adopt this strategy too, even if they possess no toxin? Some menacing Pantanal fishes display red in their tail fins, such as Salminus brasiliensis. As tail fins are often targeted by fin-nipping piranhas, perhaps this red threat is no coincidence. Extensive studies of predator stomachs in H. equus and H. megalopterus could confirm or debunk this theory. Habitats and feeding. Both species are often found near the margins of lagoons and rivers, or in flooded meadows, pools, and streams during the wet season. Here they flit in between semi-aquatic and aquatic vegetation and forage around sunken roots and branches at the edges of bodies of water. They can be observed hanging beneath the beds of floating water hyacinth, Eikenhornia They can be observed hanging beneath the beds of floating water hyacinth, Eikenhornia crassipes, along the riverbank, or searching for food near the substrate among submerged plants such as hornwort, Ceratophyllum demersum, and Nymphea spp. I found that even at their most abundant, black phantoms were always outnumbered by the Serape tetra. While there may have been some hundreds or sometimes thousands of serape cruising past me, sprinkled among them would only be maybe a few dozen phantoms. This may be the result of an evolved difference, such as different diets. Variations in diets may mean that population densities remain unbalanced, an ecological function that prevents a build-up and overlap of competition and resources, which would result in a collapse in both species populations. Each of these two species has different dentistry, suggesting some divergence in diet, but this remains a theory until large-scale studies are carried out. In captivity, both species will eat whatever they are offered. Serape tetra have a reputation as fin nippers, although this is usually due to too few individuals being kept together. Increase the shoal size and nipping usually disappears. Black phantoms can be boisterous among themselves, but are otherwise generally peaceful. For those with a community tank, black phantoms make great fish, getting along with other peaceful tank mates and generally behaving themselves. As with most small tetras, keeping a decent-sized group will increase confidence, leading to spectacular dance-offs between the males, as they compete for both the attention of the females and a dominant spot somewhere within the group hierarchy. Providing plenty of cover in the form of plants, floating vegetation, and branchy wood would be appreciated. Keeping them with small fish at the surface, such as hatchetfish, and others that busy themselves over the substrate, like Corydorus, as ditherfish, will also bring out the best in these midwater tetras. They will see that there are no predators above or below, and this will relax them. Black, or red as they are in the wild, phantom tetras are frequently found alongside several other aquarium favourites, including Aphyocarax antici, A. nasseri, and A. rathboni. They occur in the same habitats as Epistogramma combre, Epistogramma trifasciata, Corydorus anus, Corydorus hastatus, and the aquarium classic, the black widow tetra, Gymnocorymbus ternerzi. In the substrate beneath, at least two species of Rhinoloricaria and Rhinoloricaria parva, can be spotted with difficulty. In the Panthanal, I've seen black phantoms shoaling alongside Moencausia forestii, the southern cousin of the famous red-eye tetra, Moencausia sanctiphilomone, and with Hemigrammus neptunus, a relative of the popular Amazon head-and-light-tail tetra, H. olicifer. Another favourite of mine, the black-line tetra, Hemigrammus ulrei, is also seen alongside black phantoms in the wild. Setting up a biotope. For those hoping to create a biotope with authentic-looking black phantoms, there's no need to despair. With some careful searching and politeness, you can find and request the netting of the reddest individuals from a store tank. I've found that small red males tend to be darker as they mature, but reddish females will retain their colour even as they grow. You might even have a go at breeding and separating the tiny males with the reddest coloration and try to breed out the darker variant gene like some kind of Jurassic Park creature until you bring the original form to the hobby. Until you bring back the original form to the hobby. As we've seen in terms of biotope correct tank mates, there's a great array to choose from. Alternatives to the real deal, such as Moencausia sanctiphilomone and Hemigrammus olicifer, can act as stand-ins for the hardcore biotope fanatic, and a bit of searching and ordering through shops can lead to tracking down of Moencausia oligipus and Moencausia dicrua, also common in the river habitats of H. megalopterus. Whether you have a 60cm tank in a corner or an 80cm tank full on dominating the room showpiece aquarium, you can create an array of easy yet beautiful natural looking displays. Your first ingredient could be coarse yellowish sand. I find that the ADA Colorado sand is the most similar to what I see in the wild, but the JBL Zanzibar range would offer some good choices too. Branches, roots, a few heavier bits of wood suggesting a fallen tree, and a scattering of pebbles such as those from the Prodobio relief series of gravels will look very natural. Frequently, I've watched black phantoms foraging over leaf litter, and for those wanting something closer to biotype correct, the botanical products of Tannin Aquatics or Blackwater UK would provide a range of South American leaves, seeds, branches, and pods. A 3D background that looks like a clay riverbank with some roots hanging down, some tangles of hornwort caught against them, swaying in the flow near the surface, and an open area of sand, gravel, and leaf litter below would look very much like some sort of habitat in which these fish would dash about and forage for food. For a wet season look, it's good to choose one or two dominant species, especially tetras, and then a mix of smaller numbers for others. For example, if I were asked to recreate the Salobra River in a 120cm tank, I'd have perhaps 12 Hipposabricon megalopterus, 30 Hipposabricon equus, 8 Apicarex rathburni, 8 Hemigrammus olicifer standing in for H. neptunus, and perhaps a small gang of Apistogramma combre for a non-tetra point of interest. The point is that you can mix and match to your heart's content. A smaller tank, such as 60 centimeters, with only 12 to 15 H. megalopterus, floating plants, and lots of leaf litter, would create a very moody and interesting window into the shadow world, underneath the beds of vegetation at the edges of the Pantanal Lagoon. Whatever you choose, at least 12 black phantoms should be kept together, and a ratio of 2 to 3 females to each male is best, as this will give you enough males to see regular display behaviour, but not so few that one is bullied into submission with nowhere to hide. The presence of females will keep the males active and coloured up, whether black or red. Black Phantom Tetra. Scientific name, Hiphosabricon megalopterus. Pronunciation, Hiphosabricon megalopterus. Size, to 3.6 centimeters. Origin, South America, Bolivia, and Brazil. Habitat, wetlands, slow streams, and rivers, ponds, habitat, wetlands, slow streams, rivers, ponds, lakes, and pools. Tank size, 90 by 30 by 30 centimeters for a shoal. Water requirements, soft and acidic. Water requirements, soft and acidic to neutral water, 6.5 to 7.5 pH, 2 to 12H. Temperature, 21 to 28 degrees Celsius. Temperament, peaceful community species, can fight between males. Feeding, wholly unfussy, offer flakes, live and frozen Daphnia, bloodworm. Availability and cost, farmed fish easy to find, prices starting at about £2.50.